One of the top reasons that relationships break down is because of constant conflict and unresolved issues. Hey friends, my name is Carrie Grace, and I love to talk about all things femininity, living abundantly, and stress-free productivity. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please consider subscribing. Today we're gonna dive into conflict and unresolved issues in our relationships. If you're stuck in a cycle of just conflict and issues that never seem to actually get resolved in your relationship, then I'm certain this video is gonna help you. Now, of course, like occasional conflict is normal in every relationship. But if there is just this constant conflict, that can actually be a major predictor of a relationship that's about to break down. I look at conflict as something that's actually really healthy, and it's a sign of two individuals that are showing up authentically and openly. However, if you're operating in unhealthy communication patterns or unresolved personal issues, then you can actually let that conflict become a sabotager of your relationship. Let's talk about what it means to have healthy conflict, because that's something that is just going to happen in any relationship, and it's actually a good thing. So let's talk about what makes it healthy, and then we're gonna dive into what it looks like when it's unhealthy. So healthy conflict has three components. It has active listening, open communication, and collaboration. When I talk about active listening, this is when the listener is fully engaged in what the speaker is sharing. They're paying close attention in order to understand. They are looking to clarify. They are empathizing with what the other person is sharing, and they're withholding any kind of judgments, and they're not interrupting. That's what it looks like when someone is actively listening. They're asking maybe clarifying questions, and they're summarizing back to the person that was sharing just to make sure that they understand. Now let's talk about open communication. In open communication, both parties feel really free to share honestly and vulnerably without the fear of rejection, criticism, judgment, or retaliation. Basically, you're treating the other person the way that you would want to be treated. That's what open communication feels like. Then the third component is collaboration. And this is where both parties are willing to look for a solution that is mutually beneficial. And it takes into account both parties, what their needs and desires are. So if you want to have a healthy conflict, that is how you do it. You're going to have active listening, open communication, and collaboration. Now, if that's not what your conflicts have felt like or looked like, then let's talk about what you may be experiencing in your unresolved conflicts. I love what Dr. John Gottman refers to as the 4 horsemen of toxic conflict. I think these are so well stated, so we're gonna go through that. The first one is criticism. If you in a conflict are operating in criticism, you're attacking the other person's character rather than addressing a specific behavior, then that is a toxic communication pattern. Another is contempt. And this is when you're mocking, or you're using sarcasm or name calling, or you're just showing superiority over your partner. The third is defensiveness. You're playing the victim, or you're shifting the blame instead of taking responsibility. And the fourth one is stonewalling. And this is when you just shut down, you are avoiding the conversation, and you're giving this silent treatment. And once people start stonewalling, that really makes it impossible to resolve a conflict, because now you have a party that is no longer active in the conflict. When you operate in those toxic communication patterns, that really results in escalation rather than de-escalation and emotional flooding. And you're then unable to communicate effectively because you've become overwhelmed. These are a few signs that you've now escalated and you are now emotionally flooded, if that's not a term that you're familiar with. This is when you now have raised voices, rapid speech, maybe aggressive body language. You're gonna feel your heart rate increasing, and it's gonna be hard for you to think logically. The goal really becomes, I just want to win the argument rather than resolving the issue. Once you are in that escalated emotional flooding state, you are now at a place where it's going to be very difficult to resolve anything, because you have a different mindset now about the conflict. Okay, then we have the blame and the scorekeeping. These are other really unhealthy communication tactics that sometimes we can get stuck in. So when you operate in this, you are bringing up past mistakes in order to win an argument rather than just focusing on solving the current problem. This is the person that they will go unlock the vault and they will bring out everything in the past and attach it to this one issue. And it's too overwhelming then, rather than just being able to isolate that issue and deal with that one thing. Another really toxic communication style is the passive aggressiveness. And this is when people are indirectly expressing anger instead of just openly addressing an issue. Another is just invalidating and dismissing someone else's feelings. And this can be like, well, what about all the things I do for you? You're just focused on the one thing that I don't do for you. And so they're dismissing the experience potentially that you're having right now and trying to get you to focus on, something else so that you can't have legitimate feelings that you're experiencing right now. You may be making your partner feel like their emotions or their concerns are unimportant. Maybe it's phrases like, well, you're just overreacting and you're always so sensitive. It's not a big deal. Stop being dramatic. When we say things like that, we're shutting down the other person by demeaning and belittling their emotions and their feelings. Another is the lack of resolution and bringing up the same issue over and over again. If you are continually having the same argument over and over and you just keep bringing it back, that is a sign that this is an unresolved issue. And until you take the time to really come up with tangible solutions to that, you're going to be stuck in this loop and it's deteriorating your relationship and your connection with one another. All right, now let's talk about when we have unrealistic expectations or we're operating in control. When we expect our partner to be able to meet all of our emotional needs or we're trying to control their behavior, then this is putting too much of an expectation on the other person. No one can fill all of your needs and no one can meet all of your expectations. There's a line from the book The Shack where it says, we can operate in expectation, which always limits what the outcome can be and allow us to be satisfied. Or we can operate in expectancy, which allows us to be open to a lot of different options that could actually bring satisfaction. And when we operate in expectation rather than expectancy in our relationships, then we're really putting our partner into a very small box that they can operate in that would make us feel satisfied. Okay, so let's talk about how can we break the cycle of unhealthy conflict. None of us like this experience. We do not want to repeat this. So how do we get out of it? Number one is going to be self-awareness. We have to recognize the toxic patterns that we are operating in and take responsibility for that and begin to look for other ways to engage in a conflict that are not using those toxic behaviors. Number two is to require of yourself to have respectful communication. When we express our feelings honestly and we're not using blame or defensiveness, then that's how we're actually having respectful communication. And like I said earlier, it comes back to really treating the other person the way that you would want them to treat you. If we apply that golden rule, it will really help our communication. Next is to do what you need to do on your side to repair the communication that has been unhealthy. You may need to apologize and ask for forgiveness for some of the ways that you've engaged in unhealthy conflict. If you acknowledge your mistakes and you make an effort to reconnect after these arguments, that's going to go a long way for your partner. They're going to be able to regain that trust that whenever they are in a conflict with you, that you're going to do your part to try to resolve it. And I really encourage you to practice active listening. This is not normal for most of us in our communication styles. We are usually thinking of what I'm going to say as soon as I can get a word in, or we interrupt, we talk over, rather than just being at peace for a moment, holding like that self-control, allowing the other person to fully express and just be with them in that moment. Because sometimes when people feel like they're being heard and that you're willing to just absorb what they want to share with you, it validates the experience so much more. So just let your mind take a break from building your case and really just listen to the other person. And last, allow yourself to take breaks when you need to. If the emotions are too high, if you've gotten into that state where everything's escalated and you're emotionally flooding, then just say, hey, you know what? I feel like we're at a place right now where we need to just take a minute. We're both kind of elevated right now and we're not going to be able to resolve this from this state. So let's take a minute, let's step away, and then let's return when we both have like a calmer mind. Conflict is not what ruins relationships. It is unhealthy conflict that can destroy your relationship. So when you replace those toxic behaviors that maybe you've been operating in your conflict with healthy conflict resolutions, it's going to build a foundation of trust and respect and emotional connection between you and your partner.